may be years before we're able to assess all the damage caused by those winds of destruction that roared through coastal Alabama, Mississippi, and Florida during the darkness of September 12th and 13th. For most of us, during the pre-dawn hours, there were times when we felt isolated as this section of what used to be the Dauphin Island Causeway. But all of that quickly changed as soon as we saw the response from our neighbors from all across the nation. And that's what this story is all about. The devastation caused by Frederic's winds of destruction, the response of those who cared about us, and the courage of our citizens. It all began on August 30th, when a tropical depression was spotted off the African coast, more than 1,000 miles from Mobile. It grew into a tropical storm, then became a full-fledged hurricane. The islands that guard the Gulf of Mexico knocked some of the wind out of the hurricane that had been named Frederic, and it was downgraded to a tropical storm again. But on the morning of September the 10th, Frederic moved into the Gulf, regained its hurricane strength, and aimed its fury at our coast. The direction would never vary. By this time, WALA television had begun to track Frederic on its color radar, and as the movement showed no change of direction, and the hurricane began to gather strength from the warm waters of the Gulf, civil defense, state, and local officials began to prepare for the worst. At the Mobile office of the National Weather Service, local spokesmen began to reissue statements reinforcing those already being handed down by the National Hurricane Center in Miami.
Clouds from Hurricane Frederic are increasing, and Mobile, like the rest of the world, know these skies could become violent at any time. The death toll from Hurricane David has reached 1,500, and it continues to climb. 150-mile-per-hour winds ripped through the Dominican Republic 2 weeks ago, leaving behind an estimated $3 billion in damage. Officials at the National Weather Service here in Mobile hope to prevent that kind of damage in the United States. That's why they're keeping a close watch on Frederic. Winds from Hurricane Frederic have increased 30 miles per hour in the last 8 hours. And officials here say it's time Gulf Coast residents began to prepare for the worst.
Well, there is a chance it will because, well, it's packing 110-plus mile-per-hour winds now, and the Gulf at this time of the year, the Gulf of Mexico in September, is a fine area for intensification of storms. Now, this doesn't mean that we feel we're going to have a Camille or anything like that on our hands, because a 110-mile-an-hour storm is a pretty vicious storm.
Officials here at the Weather Service predict Hurricane Frederic will come to shore. However, how much damage he does will depend on how well Gulf Coast residents are prepared. Renee, TV 10 Newsbeat.
The hurricane continued to gain strength during the night of September the 11th, and by the time the morning of the 12th arrived, many low-lying coastal areas had already been ordered evacuated. Those who had not already boarded up windows were doing so. People began to stock up on foodstuffs and batteries and sought shelter. Preparations were made calmly and orderly, always with the wishful thought that Frederic would not strike the coast, that it would disappear. But the preparations were made and official orders obeyed. Before Frederic arrived, over 300,000 people were evacuated in the 3 states. And in the end, that action almost certainly saved countless lives. Still, we kept wishing Frederic away. In the meantime, the hurricane continued to gain strength. Winds were being clocked at 135 miles per hour. The hurricane warning extended from Panama City, Florida to Grand Isle, Louisiana. A tide surge of 15 feet was predicted near the eye, and the target was obviously near Mobile Bay. As preparations were made, TV 10 Newsbeat crews recorded the events.
It is miserable beyond belief out here. This is the entrance to the bridge that leads to Gulf Breeze, which has now been shut off completely. It's been completely evacuated, as has Santa Rosa Island, just beyond Gulf Breeze. Most of downtown Pensacola is also evacuated because of the wind, which is threatening to blow me away right now and is blowing much, much water across the bridge leading to Gulf Breeze and into the town of Gulf Breeze itself. Frederic hit Escambia County with a vengeance. Before dark, the city of Pensacola was being pounded with heavy rains and high winds. Bridges were impassable, and police were forbidding travel to Gulf Breeze. 20,000 people had left their homes and businesses, either voluntarily or by police order. Downtown Pensacola was deserted. All businesses closed, their windows protected from Frederic's winds. Many of the 20,000 are in shelters like this one at a high school. People began moving into those at noon. By nightfall, many of them were full. Families did what they could to make themselves comfortable, bringing food for the long stay.
Oh, not much. Just what's in this bag here, flashlight and orange, apple, bananas. That's all.
Are you worried a lot about your house while you're gone?
Yes, in a way. Well, not too much. I'm scared the roof or something will blow, you know, but that's about it.
The Red Cross is providing coffee for the evacuees, along with food and shelter. What sort of things do you have set up for them here?
Well, they have all the food and all their dinners that can be done, that they can eat, and they can find their own place to rest, and if they bring all their blankets, they can sit down and find a place and get comfortable.
It may not have all the comforts of home, and it is kind of crowded, but at the very least, it's warm and it is dry, and it's as good a place as any to ride out Hurricane Frederic until everything is safe once again at home in Pensacola. At the shelter in Pensacola, Mike Sampson, TV 10 Newsbeat.
Approximately 20 miles away, Gulf Shores has been sealed off. The streets are empty except for official cars. Over 10,000 people have left their homes and businesses, and officials say there was really no resistance to the evacuation. Hurricane Frederic's power was evident on the waterfront. Waves over 7 feet high already are tearing away what man has built, and the water can be seen spilling over the breakfront and inching its way down the streets. Gulf Shores command post has been set up at the police station. Electric power went out early, and the emergency unit pressed into service. But here, officials report they have done all they can. Now they can only wait.
Here in Pascagoula, the water's already coming up over some of the roads. The real problem areas here are expected to be generally south of Highway 90 and some areas along the Pascagoula River. Evacuations started early this morning. About 25 to 30,000 people in Jackson County are being advised to go to higher ground.
Please be evacuated now before all roads become completely impassable.
Jackson County Disaster Services officials say most of the lower lying areas have already been evacuated.
Shelters are available for the general public throughout the county, and so basically we have gone just about as far as we can go as the situation stands at the present moment.
People in Pascagoula were still busy boarding up homes early this afternoon, while most businesses downtown were already closed and that area almost deserted. One bottleneck has developed around the Pascagoula River drawbridge, as boats heading for safe harbor are keeping the bridge open more than usual. The Emergency Services Office is broadcasting shelter locations and other critical information over Jackson County radio stations throughout the day. In Pascagoula, I'm Alan Green, TV 10 Newsbeat.
It's now just after 1 o'clock in the afternoon. The skies have begun to blacken just a bit behind us, and we're beginning to see the front end of what Frederic is going to be like as he arrives in the Mobile area. Those 6 and 8 foot waves are only a prelude to what is in store for Dauphin Island as the evening wears on. The western end of the island is already underwater. The last of the residents on that end of the island came out by Army truck this morning. There is a ghostly look about this normally active island. Houses deserted, no traffic except law enforcement vehicles and a few who, like us, were staying until the last minute, planning to leave just before the causeway was closed. Even as those plans to close the causeway were being made, the winds were building. And Mobile County Sheriff Tom Purvis, after a tour of the island, told us that he was anticipating a rough night.
This never happened before, but I would imagine that this island is going to be underwater. I just drove about 5 miles of the west end, and it's completely underwater. We were in water up to doors in this pickup truck, and it's running from a point well back from the road. It's just not the road itself that's covered. And of course, the surf now is up probably, it's running waves of 6, 8, maybe 10 feet up on the beach now.
Only a handful of diehards, those who refuse to go, remain on the island. Everyone else, including sheriff's deputies, have evacuated the island. The island has now been sealed off and lies awaiting the fury of Hurricane Frederic. Dave Walker, TV 10 Newsbeat.
Night was bearing down on us, and so was Frederic. It had become obvious that our viewing area would bear the brunt of the storm. At 6 o'clock on September 12th, the TV10 Newsbeat crews moved to a live remote location to relay information and to show the force of the arriving hurricane.
I think right now, Wayne, it'd be safer to narrow it down. Mobile is definitely a prime area, a good possibility that this system could hit 50 miles either side of Mobile Bay right now. At the present time, it's only 80 miles south of the Alabama coast. Let's take a look now at the latest coordinates as we have them as of 6 p.m. this evening.
There would be no escaping Frederic's fury. Governor Fob James set up a command post on the eastern shore. The first of hundreds of National Guardsmen arrived. Law enforcement officials worked as long as they could to aid the evacuation. Then the order came for everyone to seek shelter. Frederic had arrived.
Stairwell might blow out.
None of us will ever forget that night. For the rest of our lives, we will tell where we were and what we experienced as Frederic's winds of destruction descended upon us. That is true for those of us at TV10 as well. At about 11:15 that night, a second-floor wall above the newsroom collapsed, flooding much of the station and rendering the downtown studios inoperable. Some 50 people evacuated the building in the middle of the storm, seeking shelter in a motel next door. But we stayed on the air, switching to our transmitter site in Baldwin County. The station would, in fact, only be off the air for some 3 minutes during the entire storm. It was those hours in the darkness that came with power failure that the winds were the loudest, that breaking limbs sounded like rifle shots and flying debris like bombs. And when the driven rain had a terrible sting, that light, any light, even a flickering candle, had the same magic as must have been experienced by the first man to see it. Frederic's winds of destruction grabbed us and shook us, and at least for a time, forced equality upon us. We were all becoming his victims. At daybreak on Thursday morning the 13th, many of the 300,000 people who had evacuated the hurricane warning area began to return. What they found was devastation. For many, the work of a lifetime just did not exist anymore. The trees that had provided so much of the area's beauty had been used by Frederic as battering rams to destroy homes and businesses. Those losses, as tragic as they are, paled as the body of a young child was found by sheriff's deputies near Grand Bay, Alabama.
In Grand Bay, several hundred families rode out the hurricane in Mobile County High School, but others did not evacuate. At 4 o'clock this morning, rescuers had to make their way past fallen trees to a stranded area on Ramsey Road near I-10. A 4-year-old girl was killed hours before they got there when a trailer reportedly fell on top of her. At this same hour of the night, the evacuation center began to empty as winds died down. For many, the trip home took hours. Trees blocked all roads leading south, but work crews moved fast. When roads did open, they led to more of the same destruction of homes and businesses. This, the Northfield Shopping Center.
When Hurricane Frederic stormed ashore here in Bayou La Batterie, its strong winds and high tides turned houses like this one into so much rubble.
I don't know, everything gone.
What do you do now?
I think if we can clear this place up, we'll go back to Tennessee.
This was to have been his retirement home. Another family returned to find their house in much the same shape.
And they tell me that part of our house is on the back side of that road there. I haven't been back there. Yeah, and my tree's still standing. Is that silly? See the crooked tree?
Rosemary Kremen says living on the coast, they expected this, but she says that doesn't make the job ahead of them any easier. Reporting from South Mobile County, I'm Herb Williams, TV 10 Newsbeat.
The day's weather seemed designed to provide contrast to what lay before us. The sun was shining, the sky blue, temperatures in the high 80s, a perfect coastal day, all to frame the initial estimates of more than $1 billion in damages. From every coastal town and community across the 3 states, the TV 10 Newsbeat crews began to bring back the stories, and the stories would continue for days.
One of the most sentimental losses here in Daphne is the old Methodist Church. It's been here over 100 years, a landmark to people who live around here, built back in the 1840s, but almost destroyed by Fred.
Downtown Fairhope was bustling today as the power was on and cleanup crews were out. Again, wind was the culprit here, ripping up businesses but claiming no injuries. A shipment of that crystal clear luxury called ice was in town, and people lined up for the popular chunks brought in from Atlanta.
It feels wonderful. We've been living in pioneer days, haven't we?
There's one saying that just a minute ago that they could get $10 a bag for it.
Is that right? So you're glad then to be back with her?
I'm glad to be in civilization again.
The familiar buzz of the chainsaw was heard here as residents cut their way out of their yards.
I'm still a little shocked at the damage and all done to it. And I go around Fairhope and it's hard to believe. It's like a dream or something. Because Fairhope is just wiped out. No trees left hardly, and it scares me, really.
The Eastern Shore has long been known for its beauty, a kind of quiet getaway place to come and just sit by the bay. Well, Frederic may have taken away part of that, but out of his destruction, a new beauty has unfolded here. A bond between the people, of reaching out and helping each other, and learning to rebuild for the future together. Carolyn Morton, TV 10 Newsbeat.
Most people are counting their blessings today because there is no question that the Gulf Coast has been lucky. The port city was struck hardest by Hurricane Frederic, and yet the death count is relatively low. However, that's not to say that Mobilians haven't suffered. 125,000 homes are still without power, and many have no water. City crews are busy trying to clear broken tree limbs from the main roads, but it will be some time before they get to side streets. Those people who have power saws aren't waiting for the city. They've already begun clearing fallen trees from the streets and property. And while many people are cleaning up and tallying the damage for insurance companies, there are others with more immediate concerns, such as finding food to eat. Long lines at emergency facilities like this one from Louisiana indicate a number of people have found their food supplies dwindling.
Lose everything. And my son, I got a little boy that I'm worried about and everything. And I'm just broken heart up about, all this. And I just couldn't believe it, it happened.
Have you been able to get enough food for your family and yourself?
Well, just barely enough.
Do you think you're going to have to start depending on the emergency relief food soon?
Yes, we certainly have.
My freezer's out and my food is destroying, and I have a lot of vegetables and stuff in there, but they're going to bad because I don't have any way to keep them.
Downtown, like everywhere else, is in shambles. A lot of damage the result of Hurricane Frederic, and a lot of it from looters.
The winds began picking up in Pascagoula about dark last night. The area hasn't really been touched by a hurricane for 10 years, since Camille. But most people here still remember that storm, and by dark, most had cleared out. With dawn, the awesome destruction that Frederic unleashed on the coast became very apparent. Here in Pascagoula, there's no power or water anywhere in the city. Here at the shelter where cameraman Larry Sherling and I spent the night, the scene outside is one of devastation. This morning, almost all roads were blocked by debris. US 90 remained open but was clogged with sightseers. Officials are asking that everyone stay off the roads unless necessary. Police say 90% of the stores in town have windows out or worse. National Guard troops have been called in to control looting. The problem was reportedly severe last night. Police have made 6 arrests. Evacuees had to be moved out of this and 2 other emergency shelters last night when their roofs partially collapsed. But Pascagoula was lucky. There were no reported deaths and few injuries. Now comes the immense task of cleaning up and, for some, starting over. In Pascagoula, I'm Alan Green, TV 10 Newsbeat.
At first glance, what's left of this popular beachfront resort area reminds one of a war zone. Everywhere you look, there is total devastation. Residents say there's not a house or business that escaped damage. Beachgoers will probably remember this used to be Highway 98 rolling along the oceanfront. Right now, it's at least shoulder deep in white sand. The incredible ocean surge from the hurricane literally moved motels across the street and replanted them in the front yards of summer homes. Today, 6 days after the hurricane hit, cleanup is slow but steady. Residents are trying to put the pieces back together, but the memory of what used to be still hurts the most.
Tore up, that's all.
Is it going to take you a while to rebuild?
Well, it'll take me a while, yeah. I am. Still in the days.
Other residents complain Gulf Shores was isolated after the storm, and despite the help of National Guard troops, disaster assistance has been slow. Destruction is everywhere. The concrete Gulf Shores Convention Center's entire first floor is a total loss, while just down the beach, wooden homes like this one were pushed and shoved around like dominoes. Vital services are still out. Phone lines remain down, and work crews can't even find the sewer lines. There is also confusion at City Hall over leadership of the stricken community, so Governor James appointed Dick Forrester to direct the disaster relief services.
Only from the air could one begin to really understand what Frederic's winds of destruction had done. Dauphin Island was almost completely destroyed. By some miracle, 26 people who had elected to stay on the island survived, just barely. The Dauphin Island Marina was in shambles. The causeway, the only link to the island, was destroyed. The few slabs of concrete still connecting the causeway pilings looked like playing cards tossed out by a giant dealer. The causeway bridge was gone, lying somewhere beneath the water. Price tag for reconstruction of the causeway alone estimated at $30 million. Everywhere one looked, there was destruction. And at Civil Defense Headquarters, as officials gathered to assess the crisis, they were faced with a constant barrage of major decisions. 2 very important ones came quickly. There had been reports of looting, and Governor Fob James responded harshly.
James says he does expect the area to be declared a national disaster area, providing the opportunity for low-interest loans. The governor also talked about providing aid to those in need of it, and he issued a stern warning to anyone who might be thinking of taking advantage of those who have suffered the ravages of Hurricane Frederic.
I want to say right now, we have troopers in the field, we have armed guardsmen in the field, and any person desiring to do anything along the lines of looting of any kind or vandalism will be dealt with in the most severe manner.
The governor stopped just short of saying the guardsmen and state police have orders to shoot to kill. Not so Pritchard Mayor Jay Cooper, who moments later said he has issued orders to his men that they should fire 2 warning shots to stop suspected looters, and that should that fail, they should shoot to kill. Police and guardsmen in all the affected areas will be especially watchful as the 7 p.m. curfew goes into effect tonight.
And there were reports of price gouging and profiteering. Again, officials responded quickly.
If they are found guilty of profiteering, they are subject to arrest, they're subject to a fine of $500 or more, and 6 months in jail, perhaps 2.
Okay, you got to move this one out of here.
The profiteering ordinance came in part as a result of those who were selling ice for $4 a bag. And even for those who were selling at a fair price, such as this A&P on Airport Boulevard, there were problems. The need for ice was so great, and the lines became so long, and there were those few who refused to wait their turn, that police and National Guardsmen were called in. There was concern for a time on that first day that the crowds would get out of hand.
Y'all back it up, man. Back it up. Y'all back on up. Back up. Let's go.
Yeah, we were in the line when you was
back on up. Back up. Back on up.
The end result of those problems was the takeover of ice distribution by local authorities. Distribution points were established and ice was handed out free under police supervision. The reports of looting continued. A 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. curfew was declared. National Guardsmen joined law enforcement officers in patrolling all the areas affected by Hurricane Frederic. The curfew would stay in effect for more than a week. In the end, the amount of looting and profiteering would be considered minimal, but the end result may well have come because of quick action by those officials involved. President Carter led the vanguard of what would become an army of federal relief officials who would come to the area, bringing with them the tools to aid in rebuilding: low-interest home and business loans, the Army Corps of Engineers manpower to aid in debris removal, food stamps for the victims. The helicopter tour started in Mobile and moved to Pascagoula, where one stop was at Ingalls Shipyards, a major employer in the area that suffered $10 million in damages.
Go ahead. We have both a representative from Washington of the Corps and also the regional director of the Corps.
Well, now, the Corps said they couldn't show till Monday, Mr. President, and we need them before Monday. This thing is...
The big trees, especially, they block roads.
The big stuff.
The big trees. Municipalities in the county simply don't have that heavy of equipment to remove that kind of material.
I understand. Do you have a construction battalion in the National Guard?
Yes, we do.
They work
in
the
base Gulfport. Yes, sir. We have the CB base. We have all of us setting up. We're setting a headquarters in Ocean Springs for the feds and the statewide people, and then, of course, local people will be in each community.
Except I'm going to leave my best man down here with you.
You're right. Ain't no question about it. He's one of the best in the world. Jack wasn't standing over there, I'd say the best. We'll be glad to have him.
If you have any problem with the Corps of Engineers question, just let Jack know, and we'll take care of it right away. I know the Corps is eager to help, and they'll cooperate fully.
The tour continued along the coastline, over Dauphin Island to Pensacola, Florida, where the president promised quick federal action that would continue as long as needed. Several days later, the federal relief effort arrived, and Mobilians and other Gulf Coast residents were once again faced with lines. Long, slow-moving, wait-all-day lines. Lines became a major part of the aftermath of Hurricane Frederic. The federal relief centers also house the various other agencies, both governmental and volunteer, that offer services to Frederick's victims. And for those in the lines, the waiting seemed endless.
Once inside, the waiting continues and the confusion begins. Anyone in Jackson County who suffered loss from Frederic must come here to report. More people showed up than anticipated, but Governor Cliff Finch says help is on the way.
Have they already said from Washington you will get relief?
I'm trying to get it through now in Washington. Yes, part of the officials said we're getting it. I know we're going to get it, and I'm getting a call into the White House now and see if we can't get some emergency measures for this right now.
The long line simply became a part of a bad memory that will come to mind when someone mentions Frederic. We have also experienced the caring and the graciousness of our neighbors in this state and all across the nation. And we've also had an opportunity to test our own mettle. And we have shown that we have the ability to endure, the ability to exist, and the ability to rebuild. Out of all of this has come a stronger sense of community. Frederick's winds of destruction have gone. They're no longer with us. And they left behind a clear sky and a promise for a better tomorrow.